Hey, Ron here again. Here to talk about something maybe weird. Uh, let's call this one Ron Talks About the News. Mortal Kombat has always been really fucking goofy. Because it has. Mortal Kombat has always been goofy. But this is relevant in the context of, I don't want to call them conservatives. Let's say reactionaries? Conservative reactionaries. Being upset about costumes or something in the new Mortal Kombat. So, I'm old enough to remember every single Mortal Kombat. All of them. All the way back to Mortal Kombat 1 on the Super Nintendo, which I used to play with my uncle. He would kick my ass. Unless I could get him up in the corner, with Sub-Zero, just pow, 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 pow. That shit was overpowered. Yeah. Mortal Kombat has always been goofy. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I like Mortal Kombat. I have always liked Mortal Kombat. I especially liked it on the PlayStation 2, when they had Deadly Alliance and Deception and Armageddon. I especially liked Deception, actually. And that's for a specific reason. Deception is probably one of the less goofy games that they made. And I think I'm going to need to clarify here. Goofy is not bad. Look at a Goofy movie, for example. That's not a bad movie. It's a very heartfelt movie. It's just kind of silly. But, silly isn't bad. Silly is entertaining, usually. And when I say silly, what I mean is that it's surreal in a way that is specifically meant to be surreal and over the top, in a way that is intended to be entertaining. If I sound weird, it's because I have a cold. So in Mortal Kombat, I've put a great deal of thought into how to phrase this. In Mortal Kombat, you don't typically have good guys and bad guys. You have some good guys and you have some bad guys. But more important than that is you have the real bad dudes. No. You have the bad dudes, like Scorpion and Sub-Zero and like Kung Lao, who are not bad people necessarily. They're not antagonists, but they're not exactly good guys either. Their defining trait is that they are pure 100% badass. And then, on the other hand, you have the real bad dudes. People like Shao Kahn, people like Quan Chi, people like Shang Tsung. People like, what's the name of the guy with the laser eye? Kano. Can't believe I forgot his name. He's been around since the first game. You do have some good guys, but their archetype is, like, surreally weird. Like, Liu Kang has typically been an archetypical good guy, but, he's kind of a laughingstock, in that, he's a Bruce Lee clone. Like, his entire character is a joke. I mean, half of the first Mortal Kombat was kind of a joke. You had Bruce Lee facing off against, fucking Jean-Claude Van Damme facing off against the lightning god from Big Trouble in Little China. It was a joke. And it wasn't a bad joke, and it's again, I like Mortal Kombat, but it isn't something that you should take seriously, which brings me back to Deception, and how it's the least goofy, in that it introduces a great deal of complexity into the narrative. You had Shujinko, who had a very goofy name. His name means protagonist. You had Shujinko, who was being explicitly manipulated by forces that he couldn't quite understand. You had Onaga, this quasi-deistic being who made Shang Tsung look like a Teletubby. Shang Tsung was so crazy powerful and crazy evil that Raiden did... Raiden did a kamikaze attack on him and didn't scratch him. And Onaga had been manipulating Shujinko into releasing him. And other people, incidentally, like Scorpion, were put upon Shujinko to stop him and failed because Shujinko was also very powerful, although not in the same way. You also had these added complexities of like the nature of the different realms. You had a realm of order, you had a realm of chaos, you got a glimpse into the nature of the nether realm, you got a glimpse into how Outworld worked. Shujinko traveled all of these realms and did various things, interacted with various people, and it was kind of really cool. Like, the world-building stuff was really interesting, and it added a lot of context. It added a lot of flavor to the story, and I really liked it. Because I'm a sucker for world-building. It scratches an itch that I have. But I'm to understand that almost no one else liked it. Deception was widely panned. People seem to have not liked it. At least, that is what I'm to understand the situation is. People really disliked Deception, people really disliked Armageddon, and people, almost everybody, hated Mortal Kombat vs. DC. And now we're coming... these same people are talking about the new Mortal Kombat, and are saying, oh, this one's bad now too. And me looking at this new Mortal Kombat 11, it seems to me that it's hitting a lot of the same beats that Deception did. You have a larger threat that has the ability to overpower the beings that are preserving the status quo, that is, the Elder Gods. You have a great deal of complexity, moral complexity, people being deceived, people being put under the heel of beings that they can't quite control, or that they don't quite understand. And I almost feel like the people doing the complaining about Mortal Kombat fall into two camps. This new Mortal Kombat, they fall into two camps. They're either people who would be complaining about it regardless of the nature of... They're either people who are complaining for the sake of complaining, or they're people who are acting for an audience. And the people who are acting for an audience are kind of... There are people like that. The big one, the Quartering, I think is how he goes on YouTube. He's admitted that he just panders to his audience. You can't really... He doesn't take himself seriously, so you can't take him seriously. But there are other people like Carlgon, for example, who will be complaining about certain aspects of the game, regardless of... People don't like complexity. People don't like... Well, most people don't like complexity. Most people don't like being made to think about their own actions and how even good intentions can be made to go awry. Like, okay, let me give you an example of a game that's not goofy, a game that is genuinely complex. Dark Souls. Dark Souls is not goofy. Dark Souls is very complex, very dense. Dark Souls is a game where you don't really have a clear good guy. Not just that you don't really have a clear good guy, but that everybody is clearly doing the best that they can. Everybody is clearly doing what they think is right, and everyone is misguided to some degree or another. Like you have Gwyn, who, he went and he rekindled the flame and bid humanity to do the same, or it's inferred later that it wasn't Gwyn that did that, but it was Gwendolyn who did it. And, like, that's stated in later games and implied in the first game to have been a very wrong thing to do. But, like, he was protecting his people, the gods. Dark Souls is another topic, and is another, like, the lore of Dark Souls and things that I've inferred are vastly different than other people's. That might be something I get into later, but, then you have people like Gwendolyn and, Frampt? Yeah, Kingseeker Frampt, who are specifically guiding undead towards the first flame so that they can succeed Gwyn. Now, is that wrong? Probably. But they're trying to hold their society together. They're failing. And the game makes a point to demonstrate that they're failing. The veneer of their society functioning is almost literally paper thin. You can destroy it yourself with a fucking knife. But that doesn't mean that there's nothing there worth saving. And you observe that the first time you go into an Orlando. I feel like people who talk about, how, deceiving the undead is very bad. It's not wrong, but, there's another aspect to this that you have to understand. They're not doing this for no reason. It's not malevolent. They're trying to keep themselves and their world alive. And then you have beings like, the big one that comes to mind is, Kath, right? He's trying to bring about the dark. But I would argue that Kath is the most evil being that you encounter, at least in the first Dark Souls. Because he repeatedly, more than once, creates a society that destroys itself. He empowers societies to destroy themselves utterly. Not just randomly, but through the loss of human life. You see this happen at least twice in the game. Kath is inferred to be responsible for the collapse of Ulasil. It's either Kath or Frampt, right? Probably. We don't know that for sure, but they wouldn't mention a toothy serpent without us needing to know which one it was. And then obviously there's New Londo, which created the Darkstalkers, which literally destroy human life, and which were deemed to be such a threat by the people living in New Londo that they chose to destroy themselves rather than even risk the Darkstalkers leaking out into the world of men. Kath is responsible for that. And the thing is, ultimately, Kath is right. But, that's not worth it. Bringing about a rightful future isn't worth destroying the entire fucking civilizations. Creating, whatever a virus to civilizations might be. I think we can agree on that point. I think rational people can agree on that point. Mortal Kombat doesn't have any of that complexity. Not really. When it has tried to introduce that complexity in the past, it has been panned. When it tried to introduce the complexity of, the Elder Gods were trying to stop Onaga, Shao Kahn, the big bad guy of the franchise, was not as bad as Onaga. And maybe Onaga is the rightful ruler of Outworld, and maybe he has a point to that. When they tried to introduce that complexity, it wasn't taken very well. And I think that the thing that a lot of people are really complaining about It doesn't have to do with the costumes. A lot of people are using the costumes as a medium. A lot of people are talking about, social justice as a medium. But really, they're complaining about Mortal Kombat getting less goofy and getting more serious. Which, I don't know. I mean, I can see both sides to that. Like, on one hand, like, there's enough seriousness in the world. Maybe people need some kind of escapism from that. But on the other hand, maybe people have too much seriousness in the world, and people need some sort of escape from that. Maybe the developers have a responsibility to create things that that reflect the world in which they live. Maybe they have a responsibility to the people who their audience is. Maybe they have a responsibility to themselves to do whatever they want to do. All I can really tell you about it, my ultimate opinion about at least the costumes. I like things that are goofy, but as far as like the super skimpy costumes go, I'm glad they're gone because I'm not a big fan of watching scantily clad women get buzzsawed in half by Kung Lao. That's weird. Can we all agree that that's really weird and unnecessary? Yeah. I don't know, I just wanted to say something about that. And that's all I've got to say. I'm all talked out. So, I guess until we get there, take care of yourselves, alright? Also, that shit... Let me zoom in. You see that? That shit? That is super cool. Thank you so much. Wow. I never thought I'd break 500 subscribers. This is awesome.